But right now I'm joined by Cassie, our film correspondent, who's going to be discussing historical accuracy.
Yes, from the earliest days of cinema, history has proven to be a goldmine for filmmakers. From D.W. Griffith's Birth of a Nation to Gone with the Wind, Titanic, and Saving Private Ryan, experience has demonstrated time after time the extent to which audiences crave to see their past brought to life on the big screen. History, like sex and violence, equals box office bucks. Take, for example, the 1997 film Titanic, essentially a traditional poor boy meets rich girl love story, except that James Cameron spent $200 million to place the movie in a particular historical moment, not only building a 775-foot replica of the ship, but also studying photographs in order to reproduce everything from paintings to carpets to table settings exactly as they would have been on the Titanic, and even putting in that silly bit at the beginning with the old woman in the wheelchair and the guys with the little robotic submarine, just to underscore the film's historical context. And the gamble paid off. Titanic made over $600 million in the US alone. But although Hollywood's relationship with the history books has proven financially rewarding, it's not been without its problems, namely the frequent arguments that spring up surrounding historical inaccuracy. Rarely does a historical picture weather close examination by historians without them finding something wrong. Joseph Rockmore's book, History Goes to the Movies, lists some of the best and worst films according to their historical accuracy. Some of the best include Ron Howard's Apollo 13 and the 1966 film A Man for All Seasons. Among the worst, he lists Elizabeth, Dances with Wolves, JFK, The Thin Red Line, and perhaps most shocking of all, Rosebud. Yes, widely regarded as one of the greatest films ever made. According to Rockmore, in historical terms, Citizen Kane is about as much use as a sledge on custard. So do filmmakers have a responsibility to stick to the facts when it comes to history? Now obviously there are occasions when historical hiccups are beyond the filmmaker's control, whether through sloppy research or simply the difficulty of accurately recreating a certain aspect of the historical context. World War II films, for example, are often criticised for seemingly confusing the Spitfire and the Hurricane fighters, with each popping up where they shouldn't really be. The fact is that there are so few of either still flying that filmmakers are forced to use whatever they can get their hands on, historical accuracy be damned. But what about occasions when filmmakers purposefully manipulate history? Should this be seen as in some way an abuse of their privileged position? History professors worldwide would seem to think so. One film in particular gets them especially angry. Oliver Stone's 1991 film, JFK, mixed fact with speculation, but presented itself as a docudrama, following the efforts of a district attorney to expose a conspiracy surrounding the assassination of the 35th President of the United States.
To prove there was a conspiracy involving Clay Shaw, we must first prove that there was more than one man involved in the assassination. To do that, we must look at the Zapruder film, which my office has subpoenaed. The American public has not seen that film because it has been kept locked away in a vault for the last 5 years in the Time Life building in New York City. There's a reason for that.
History professor Stephen Gillen claimed that students in his classes, when asked about the assassination, would consciously or unconsciously refer to the film as though it was a scholarly resource. Such is the power of film that it will inevitably have an effect on how we perceive historical events. But film is, first and foremost, there to entertain, not to educate. But that's not to say that filmmakers don't care about the criticism levelled at them by historians. They do, and they do for a very specific reason: money. The film industry is driven by money, and films must do everything possible to get audiences buying cinema tickets. If audiences believe a film is unhistorical or inaccurate, they simply won't go to see it. They want to believe what they see on screen is this. Why you will find that in the build-up to the release of a historical film there will be a lot of emphasis put on the historical accuracy of the movie and the length to which the filmmaking team have gone to faithfully recreate a certain period in order to reassure audiences that what they see is actually how it was. But, And this is a big but. History is simply not cinema friendly. History is complicated, full of unanswered questions and characters that blur the boundaries between good and evil, hero and villain. Hollywood reduces events to a simple storyline, presenting the otherness of the past in a comfortable and appealing form and according to dramatic conventions with which audiences are familiar. This means striking a balance between historical accuracy and proven Hollywood formula, and this means manipulating history. And there is a proven formula to the genre known as cinematic history that incorporates strategies common to most historical films in order to make them understandable, exciting, inspiring, relevant, and intriguing to audiences. Cinematic history will simplify historical evidence and will exclude a lot of the details. Historians really get annoyed about this, but surely even they can see that a film of 2.5 hours cannot possibly incorporate every detail of the life of Alexander the Great or Elizabeth I. As Alfred Hitchcock put it,
"Cinema is not a slice of life, but a slice of cake."
Yes, think about that one. Another common strategy is to collapse several historical figures into one. This is so that audiences have just a few principal characters with whom to engage. And also because very often 5 characters in history will each possess one of the characteristics which cinema audiences like to see in their film characters. And so together, 5 people create one whole person in cinema terms. Cinematic history will very often make a clear distinction between good and evil, heroes and villains. And although the academics get a bit hot under the collar about this, accusing Hollywood of partisanship, very rarely are films fail to make clear distinction successful with critics or audiences. Did anyone see Ang Lee's Ride with the Devil? A fine film, but it failed to distinguish sufficiently between the heroes and villains. There are many, many more, which I won't go into, but often these strategies require tinkering with historical detail. So does this negate their value? An interview with Columbia history professor Mark C. Carnes, Oliver Stone was asked to respond to such a question.
Movies are history, and often hotly disputed. Lawrence of Arabia, which I saw as a young boy, was torn apart by the reviewers who called it a camel opera. People said much of it never happened. But watching the film made me want to go back and read the 7 Pillars of Wisdom because the movie excited my interest. Movies are just the final draft. They raise questions.
That was, of course, a recreation of Oliver Stone's response. Just thought I'd make that clear. Take, for example, Steven Spielberg's Saving Private Ryan. In terms of actual historical detail about the Second World War, it's pretty sparse. But the film packed a massive emotional punch, particularly that opening 25 minutes, the bit that people went on and on and on and on about. In the wake of the film's release, visits to the D-Day beaches increased, as did sales of books about the Normandy landings. Saving Private Ryan got people talking. And that's where the value of cinematic history lies. It is the responsibility of audiences to recognise that film cannot be there to give them an accurate textbook history. It's not in Hollywood's remit or in their interest. But let the film be the starting point, the first draft, as Oliver Stone put it, leading on to a more in-depth discussion of the issues and events portrayed on the screen. Oh, and just one last thing. It was us who captured the Enigma machine, all right?
Thank you very much, Cassie, there. I know how worked up you get about U571 and John Bon Jovi's portrayal
I
of the
do get a bit worked up. I'm a war studies student, so that is particularly annoying to me.
But that was very good. Do you have any recommendations for what people should go and see over the next week?
I do. I'm gonna give a recommendation for everybody to give a film that they've previously dismissed, apart from U571, that they've previously dismissed because they think it's historically inaccurate. Give it another go. Especially go and watch Alexander. It's not actually that bad. Particularly if you get a hold of Oliver Stone's final cut, Alexander Revisited, it actually raises another issue that kind of bugs me a lot, which is how far directors are asked to edit their films in order to put them into theatres at a certain length. Watch Alexander Revisited. It's so far superior to the theatrical release of Alexander and makes a lot more sense. And it's really not as bad as people said it was. Really, honestly, trust me. Watch it. Give it a go.
Thank you very much, Cassie.
Hey, I'm Mark Ronson and you're listening to Roundhouse Radio.
I'm Paul McCartney and you're listening to Roundhouse Radio.
Yo, this is Kano in the house right now, and you don't know you're locked into Groundhouse Radio. Easy.